Did you know that water fasting has been used for healing across nearly every culture? And even animals instinctively stop eating when they're sick or injured? Today I'm joined by Gina Bria, anthropologist and founder of the Hydration Foundation, to explore water fasting not just as a tool for physical healing, but as a powerful ritual for personal transformation. You'll learn how water is more than hydration. Gina shares how fasting can reconnect you to your future self and your ancestral roots. Stay until the end to hear a powerful story of how one of my fasters connected with the late husband of a fellow faster during one of my group water fasts, an experience that left everyone in the group speechless. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Katie Deming, and this is the Born to Heal podcast, where we explore holistic practices for cancer prevention and healing. Let's welcome Gina Bria, an anthropologist and also the founder of the Hydration Foundation. Welcome, Gina.
I'm very excited to have this conversation because I think it's one that's really missing in the conversation around fasting and the anthropology, the ethnography of fasting. So thank you so much for opening this really fascinating good topic.
As an anthropologist and also a steward of water, why are you so excited about prolonged water fasting?
Well, I think water fasting is a topic that reaches so far back into our lineages, we can't even find the beginning of it. As humans, we may have to go back to animal studies and looking at what animals do when they are ill or injured. So I just want to start that conversation there because what that indicates to us is water fasting isn't just a human cultural act. It is also part of our biology. It's a way to activate biology. And I would say within the last 20 years, we now actually have some grasp of what those mechanisms actually are in terms of fasting, prolonged fasting, turning off pathways of damage and turning on pathways of recycling our own detritus in our own system. Think about that. That's really incredible. Of course, now I'm referencing that in terms to animals who take time to fast when they are injured or ill. And then in that cycle, begin to create new energy through the recycling. And then that energy tips into ways to heal that are not activated when we haven't gone through that very specific kind of process of withdrawal, recycling, and then renewal. So I love this whole topic. I think it's absolutely fascinating. But Dr. Katie, I think there is one aspect to this whole conversation, and I hope your audience is versed already. We won't have to go over all the fasting information because it's prevalent now. It's all over the place. But to talk about something I think I don't hear, which is the role of ritual. So now skipping over the animal part, although I hope we'll come back to the part where we can talk about animal rituals and fasting because it's really there. In fact, just a brief snippet. We recently had an earthquake in the San Diego Zoo. The elephants immediately started circling, and then they turned their faces outwards, their butt inwards, and they protected all their young in those that pocket. So when they sense, and of course they were getting the vibration of the earthquake already through frequency, when they sense those kinds of issues, they have animal behavior that we call instinctual, but also looks a lot like ritual. So we can now begin to think about animal ritual as present as well. And why I think ritual is the missing link to water fasting is that what we've spent the vast majority of our time in fasting talking about is how you use it as a healing mechanism, which is correct. And then people use it as a religious devotion, a devotional offering, which is also correct. But I'd like to add another element, which is ritual. Is the purpose of ritual is to add an additional layer, an additional strata to the identity that we already have. So if you're fasting for health reasons, you do not want to leave the ritual aspect behind, because you don't want to miss the potential for ritual when you're fasting to ignite a new strata and dimension of identity to who you are as you come out of the fasting. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because I've said a lot. I'm sure you have questions, reactions, ideas I'd love to hear.
Hi, it's Dr. Katie. What if I told you the most powerful healing tool for cancer and chronic disease was already within you? After 20 years as an oncologist, I discovered something that transformed my understanding of healing completely. In my free webinar, I reveal how prolonged water fasting activates your body's natural healing mechanisms, allowing your body to intelligently remove damaged cells while preserving healthy ones. During supervised water fasts, my clients have experienced some incredible results, from shrinking tumors to eliminating the need for surgery. I will guide you through the essentials of my comprehensive protocol developed from both medical expertise and holistic wisdom. Sign up now for instant access to this free webinar. You can find the link in this episode's description. Take this step towards true healing, where your body's natural intelligence becomes your most powerful ally. I think that you're hitting on something that when I started doing this, I didn't know the full impact. I was thinking, this was brought to me by my mentor who heals in the ancient ways, who, this is really an ancient practice. And he explained to me when he first brought this, you can heal cancer by doing prolonged fasting for, 30, 40 days. And at first it was just mind blowing because I didn't even think that was possible or safe, or, I just really had no reference for it. But then as I started to see the clinical results of people having, my very first person that I fasted, she had brain metastases from breast cancer, and the brain metastasis went away completely and just disappeared. And then my next person was someone with breast cancer, and the breast cancer in her breast completely disappeared. And so I was intrigued, like, wait, what's going on here? But it wasn't until I started doing this in a group setting and really having a container that was designed to help them not only traverse fast safely, but also start to uncover what else wanting to be birthed actually through this transformation. I always talk about that healing is a transformation, that in order to heal, we need to become someone different than the person who created the illness and the body. Witnessing the emotional and spiritual transformations that are happening during these fasts was surprising. Also, such a oh yeah, of course. This is what, it's a vision quest. It is a vision quest.
Absolutely.
And then the beautiful piece that I have is to have such a powerful healer supporting the energy of this group and, the frequency of Don Javier supporting this. I'm guiding them, through the process, but then they're also being cradled and supported by a frequency that is so high. And then water, there's so many places that we could go with this of, the intelligence of the water. But for me, it's funny because what you're hitting on, the ritual aspect, the transformation that's possible through this process of fasting, really, I didn't understand or perceive until I got into it and started seeing it for myself.
Mm-hmm. Because you aren't adding anything else. This is not like, oh, now I have to go, what do I have to buy? Some Tibetan bowls. What now? As a candles above, now what? It's not, you're not adding anything other. The water fast is the effort for the water fast is enough in there. What you're doing is activating it's an invitation for a dimension to come in that you may not have been aware is there hovering, waiting for you for this invitation. Because of course it has to be personal. You have to make the personal request for assistance in the ritual realm. And I'll clarify those thoughts a little bit in a minute from the anthropology point of view, which is simply a skill. It's a skill to know, oh, I get it. I'm doing this thing for my health, but my health isn't the end point. I thought it was the end point. I'm doing this to get healthy. That's what I'm trying to do, right? Actually, health, the health of the body is for something. It isn't the destination. And if you've been living your health as if it were the destination, you can see how that's already a shortcoming. It isn't, there's not enough juice in there to really bloom the health fully, because the point of health is for us to come into a fuller sense of self. And we keep adding to that all our lives and even past death. We continue to add to our infinite self in order to have something to contribute back to our group, back to our tribe, back to our culture, back to our times, back to the needs of our times. So your healing adds a dimension to you that allows you to have more really specific, needed more. Like no one's also going to be bringing this specific set of qualities, gifts, properties, and presence to your immediate circumstance of need. This is the thing about rituals. It's unbelievably personal. In fact, biology is personal. You wouldn't have been evolved to drop in at this moment unless there was a very long effort by biology to get you here, by nature to get you here. So returning to this idea that you're not adding anything, this isn't costing you anything more in terms of the effort of doing a water fast. It's simply inviting in all the dimensions of what a water fast wants to do for you, is able to do for you. Because now we can, I'll stop so you can comment on that, Katie, but there's this aspect of we have to have the conversation of, well, what the heck is water?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think I love that you describe it as this invitation, because what many people see it as, it's taking away so many things, right? And actually I do, when I talk to people who are interested in water fasting, is that there's something very powerful when we take away all of the other distractions, food, all the ways that we cope, right? We cope with food, we cope with overdoing, we cope with, the busyness of life, we cope with stuff. It's really uncomfortable for people to step away from life, and in shamanism, Don Juan, the quote of, stopping your world is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And this is what a water fast does, is it stops your world, because you have to rest. Like the healing in a water fast happens in the rest and the stripping away of everything else, that you are then faced with yourself, right? And so much detox, so many beautiful things happen actually through a water fast. But I think that it is really an invitation, and that's what I say to my people who are on the water fasting group, is that there is so much here for you, but it's really, you have to take that invitation and go into it, because so much that's possible on the personal transformation. And I thought initially that the whole purpose was to get into autophagy and to, flip the script so that instead of the cancer using the fuel from the body is using the cancer's fuel. But now, this is my personal opinion. So of course, when people come, they're going to come for whatever their own reasons are. And I I honor that because I think this is a sacred ritual. And I think that people, it's very deeply personal. But as I've witnessed this, that even if someone's cancer does not go away, the gift that can come out of an experience of doing a ritual and a rite of passage like this, like a water fast, is so far beyond that in and of itself has, I think, even more value than making the cancer go away, which seems crazy, right? So as an oncologist, I'm not saying that I don't want that to happen. And that happens a lot of the time, but it's so much bigger than that. And also that healing happens when we're transformed. And so if someone's able to transform their consciousness, to open to really seeing the world differently, seeing themselves differently, having such a different appreciation for what this thing we call life is, which most people who go through a water fast really develop a very different sense of this whole experience through the process, that is valuable beyond measure in my mind, and really so beautiful to witness. But I would, I want to know from you, like, what is the history? Like, how has water fasting been used throughout the ages as a rite of passage and this invitation into transformation?
I just want to reiterate what you've said, that connecting water fasting to identity is key.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that health is just something that happens in between that moment. And what we're shooting for here is becoming more of ourselves than we were before we started our illness or we started our water fast, and coming out on the other side with new information about who we are. It's solid. It's immutable. It can't, you have this experience and you know things about yourself that you didn't know. And again, I want to be clear, what you find out about yourself is how you find out more truths about yourself. And these truths are affirming and positive and life-giving. They're not, oh gosh, I didn't know I had such a, I was deficient in this. I was unworthy, all the kinds of self-talk that's prevalent in our culture. In fact, the highest version of we've ever lived through. No other culture ever has the kind of detrimental self-chatter that we have. But that's because we live in a very abnormal culture and it produces ill health. So helping oneself understand the whole context and of why water fast coming forward now would be such an elegant and useful approach, because now you're gaining identity while you're healing yourself, and that doesn't dissolve once you're on the other side of a water fast. But the history, the anthropology of water fasts, they're just everywhere. They're usually assigned seasonally, because if you practice water fasting seasonally, it does diminish ill health. It keeps you healthy for reasons we now understand. We're winning the Nobel Prize, acknowledging that autophagy is the what's going on when we do this fasting. But water fasting has been used, so it's been used for high holy days, high feasting cultures as a seasonal technology, but it's always been used as a personal technology as well. So you mentioned vision quests. They're always there. In fact, one little strategy in the North American, which is prevalent among North American tribes, were using maple sap as a replacement for water. So they wouldn't do entirely nothing fasting, but they would do water fast, but then they would suck on a little maple sap, which turns out to have incredible mineral content, right? So they're basically making mineral water. Super cool. All this stuff is so fascinating as I delved more deeply into it. But what I'd love to come back to is the personal use of water fasting as a vision quest. In other words, the purpose of a vision quest was to send young men and women out to discover something about themselves. And the tribe was expecting you to come back with a knowledge after a vision quest of what your gifts were, who you were, because then you would know what to contribute to your culture, to your time, to your tribe. So even through the history of a tribe, of course, different gifts are needed, and then different people are born, and then they go on different vision quests, and they come back with new information or a sense of reverence about what gifts they have to address the difficulties that the tribe or the victories that the tribe is facing right then. So personal vision quests are what's called in the anthropology literature the rite of passage. And I've always loved this term. First, because it uses the word rite, R-I-T-E, or rites of passage. And that now puts it right back in the camp of rituals and rites. And that this idea that there's accompaniments of things, there's different ritual tools that go with all of this, that are assistant, that really help to get you through a very difficult, narrow passage. This rite of passage that allows you to squeeze through a bottleneck or a troubled time or a cultural troubled, turbulence time, or a particular health issue, a body time, to get you out on the other side with leaving behind, always leaving behind whatever that difficulty is. So that's the kind of larger anthropology context, and why water fasting is showing up with such popularity in our culture. 20 years ago, this wasn't even on the map in my anthropology studies, and now it's just everywhere. And I do think it's a response. It's a technology response to our particular time. So that's the sort of larger context. And then I'm hoping you'll ask me about water.
Yes. Well, let's go there, actually. What is water in your mind?
It's a very important topic. What is water? And we're not looking deeply enough into that, because most people just think it's wet. It's keeping my organs moist. That's why I need it. And we're finding out, and your audience, of course, might be very aware of the lots of new science around phases of water. We now have a fourth, sort of plasma phase, but chances are there's so many phases of water, we're not even going to find them all in our lifetime, nor do we need to, because sort of a short process or just a category of water to help us think about this is, water, of course, is a wet material. It's actually a material set of molecules that come together that form a specific kind of material. But water is also very importantly energy. And I'm not talking about energy floating around like an aura. I'm talking about this is actually your gas for your entire system, and the gas to run, the fuel to run all living systems. So all cell biology is water-based. This is just standard. So we can often forget that water is our fuel, and therefore water fast now makes a kind of sense that it didn't quite make before, because we were all focused on the food. But now we get that the water is actually the fuel. And then the third vessel to help us think with all of this is that water is not only a material, it's not only fuel, but it's also information. And that's the breakthrough, exciting research that's happening in water right now, is that water, as it shifts its bond angles, as it collects electromagnetic signaling, as it's affected by the sun and the moon, in terms of, this is straight up anthropology. I'm not talking crazy. This is seriously, we now have beautiful science studies showing that trees will provide different density of lumber. This is all research coming out of the lumber industry, depending on when they're harvested and how many moons they've been exposed to or whatever. So we do know that there are cosmic rays coming down. We've just gone through a season of huge solar flares, and half the population are laying on the ground right now because they're having a really hard time. But this information that water collects, it's an antenna, collects, condenses and then transfers to all our cells is another way to think about water that's so vital. So that materiality of it, the fueling of it, and now the information of it makes water fasting a kind of different category of health project, because you're literally rearranging the information that your body is using to be ill, and you're getting new information, which is cell signaling, and changing so many of the mechanics of illness just by allowing water to flow with the kind of information. Of course, we all know water goes into every crack, right? We watch it on the earth. It's really in a great metaphor for what it's able to do in your body, which is to find every point that needs healing. So you're ingesting in a water fast the very information you need, that your body needs to figure out what it needs to do as a whole body system to create health for you. So long history, fascinating, very important. It's certainly timely now.
I've talked a lot about water and had many guests talk about water. And so I know that they don't think that you're crazy. And recently I was just looking at that about the moonwood. So interesting about the harvesting of the wood and how it's different if it's harvested at specific times around that.
This is Ernst Zucker's work, by the way. If you want to look him up, he's a Swiss arborist, and he is the one who's, at first he couldn't believe it. He was like, this can't be true. Now he's even documented that different species of trees respond to starlight, so that, say, for example, an oak is loves when Venus is in certain forms on the cosmos. And you think about, the orbiting that's going on and what it's doing to all the plants and all the animals and everything. If you get in these very big holistic cycles, you're like, oh, of course, that's cute. That's perfect. Of course, I knew that.
Well, and it makes sense. I mean, the tides are affected by the moon and we're water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, of course, we're affected by the cycles,
right,
in cosmology. So all of that it's so deep, actually, that it's like you can just go down and down. It's so deep with the, different aspects of this and how water connects us to literally everything, in nature and in our environment. But one of the things for me that when I first started learning about the science of water and the fourth phase of water and brought, Gerald Pollack on my show, he was the first guest that I had when I started my new season and really discovered that water is the foundation of healing. Basically, everything that I do in my practice is actually to clean out our waters, yes, and then help get our waters into the structured form that is idealized. So basically getting rid of all the toxins and clearing ourselves out. And that's one of the beautiful things about a water fast, is it really is such a beautiful cleansing of the waters and clearing out to calm people down, to actually see. And I love that you brought up this whole idea of seeing your gifts through that rite of passage. And we've seen that. Actually, one of the episodes I brought on one of my clients who just completed a 30-day water fast with her medical oncologist from Memorial Sloan Kettering, who happens to be very supportive of her water fast, which was mind-blowing in and of itself. But she had this just awakening of gifts. And, she at night, around 3 a.m., she would hear a voice that would tell her to go get a pen and paper. And then just these messages would just come through that were just for her, about what is this about? And what is this life about? What is this cancer showing her? For her, fear was like one of the biggest issues that she had dealt with, and receiving clarity around that. But then something totally unexpected, and this wasn't shared in the episode, but we had we have a transition where we have people kind of starting and stopping every Monday, right? So she was finishing her fast and another woman was coming on to her fast, and the woman who was coming onto the fast, her husband was recently deceased. And so the woman was, very sad, and just that, her husband and her would do these really, a water fast would have been something they would have done together. Like they had done these, hiking, these mountain trails and, big expeditions. And she was like, my husband would absolutely have done this with me. And so she was feeling really sad that he wasn't there with her. And this other client who had her gifts kind of open while she was fasting started getting messages from the husband. The husband was telling this woman about his wife, what she needed to do to remind her that he was with her. And he said, tell her to go look in this drawer and find something. She's going to know what it is. And when she sees it, she needs to carry it with her to let her know that I'm with her every single step. I am with her. And I'm like, I have full body chills thinking about it. And so she went, and sure enough, she found his inhaler, which he never, ever went anywhere without his inhaler. And so throughout the fast, she held that inhaler, and it was her husband with her. And so, that is not something that I think people, join a water fast to experience, but to witness that was so beautiful.
I love how funny the holy is.
Yes.
Like, could you get more like, want to be in touch with the spirits? Well, inspirited, inhaling. You can't get more of the breath of life than your husband's inhaler. Well, you've brought up a really excellent point. What we've been talking about all this time is getting you through a rite of passage to your new self, to your future. But fasting, water fasting, also connects us to our entire lineage. So now we have access to our ancestors. And that is very important because our gifts come through us in a lineage. So you're inheriting, just like you inherited your genetics, you inherit your gifts from your ancestors. There's whole and again, this is another way to talk about this, is talk about the biological lineage and how long it took for you to arrive here on the planet and all the evolution. Well, that came through specific people. And water fasting not only connects us with our future self, it aligns us with, it gets us in the line so that we feel the strength of what's behind us and what's happened behind us and who's behind us and how long that line is and how many people are helping you. It's really quite extraordinary. And it's very important that we are so de-skilled as modern people with connecting with our people beyond the veil, that we don't know how to listen to them. We don't know how to connect. In other cultures, they're like, oh yeah, you do this and it's 2-3 turns and give them some of your hair and you'll be fine. They'll be talking to you all week, and we're like, what? So water fasting is a very potent telephone line to your lineage and all of the people behind you who have made you possible, but are still supporting you that we don't know how to call it. So you can see why I think water fasting has come forward right now in this set of time, very turbulent times that everyone's living. Because if you have cancer and you want to do a water fast, you're part of this being selected to support us in the next very needed way. So, and most people who flying their way either to death from cancer or beyond and healing find out this information that they were here to deliver, and we don't even know how that happens. It may be through healing for some people, and it may not have to take. My brother died of brain cancer. My beloved brother. Okay, we all have siblings that we're the ones, right? This is my older brother, 10 years old. And he died of brain cancer in the 1980s. And he's very much alive in my life. Believe me, I feel that very deeply. But he said to me, I'm not cured, but I'm healed, right before he passed. And I was like, well, what? Wait, what did you say? Wait, let me think about that. Well, I don't know how to understand that. And it's taken me time to unpack it, but I really get it. And I wish I'd known about water fasts. I could have helped him, right? I didn't know
I really believe that everything, it happens the way that it's meant to, right? But you're absolutely correct that healing doesn't require a cure to an illness. And sometimes, and this is actually something that Don Javier talks to me about. He says, you're going to lose some battles. You're going to lose what you think with the health, but that's because this is what's meant to happen. And the healing is still possible. And actually, the healing is always possible, regardless of what happens in my, setting as cancer, right? But it could be any illness that, and we're so focused. I think this brings us back to the first thing that you talked about, that the physicality and the body and the health is not the destination. It's the vehicle for the self-expression of our being, right? Which is so much bigger, which is eternal, which is coming through us. And, we forget when we're here that we're not going anywhere. We're going to come, we're going to come back in another form. The soul is eternal, but we get so attached to this being. But that is the beauty, is to understand that the physicality is just the expression. Like, this is the way that we are able to really serve in the way that we came here to serve. And that to me, I think is where this practice, this ritual, this beautiful, beautiful, ancient practice that now has become part of my practice, I just feel like so much reverence for it. Incredible. And I'll just take, for example, the woman Donna who came on the podcast. We've been working on fear for a year. She'd been working with my emotional healer. She had done Psych-K. She had done all these different things, working with these different healers. And the water fast is what finally started to lift that fear for her. And that was the transformation that allowed her to, she would have these beautiful visions where she could actually unzip herself in the middle of the night, like, unzip her body and watch her light body come out and dance around the room and see the beauty, the wholeness of who she is. And that's just, there's no words for it. And honestly, I think maybe it's hard for people listening to this podcast to even understand, what does that even mean? But when you experience it, when you start to really have that personal experience of understanding we are not just this body, there's something so much bigger going on, and there's so much magic at play that you just never can put that genie back in the bottle. It's out. Once someone has that experience, they know it on a cellular level, and it's the water, right? It's the water holds that memory too. So, and for me, I think this has been such a beautiful learning in this lifetime. Obviously, I know that I've done this, I'm sure, before and before and before, because, none of this is new. But, in this lifetime, in this, practice of what I'm doing, it's so new. And I feel like a child, just my eyes opening to see the beauty that's unfolding in front of me.
And when she unzips, and what you mentioned that clicked for me was she's dealing with the fear, right? Yeah. And a water fast is saturating you with new information so that it's possible, it's likely that fear is, water's a solvent, right? It's literally dissolving. So this kind of, maybe if I can just review everything I've said for your listeners so that they have some choice phrases to hang on to, reminding people that water is both a material, beautiful, moistening material. It's a fuel. It's the only way you're going to fuel renewal of cells. And it's information that you didn't have before. That's really exciting and interesting. And it's the whole picture. It's not all of what water is, but now you have like a way to think about all the dimensions that it's doing. And then it not only provides you with your future, blooms it into it, so that you become more than you were, but it also connects you with this entire lineage and history. which is another reason why you get so much more stability. You're not doing this thing alone. You're now doing it in a context of maybe all of your future selves are waiting for you out there, but certainly all of your ancestors who have come are now connected to you in this beautiful way. And of course, the way we opened our interview was to say, your destination isn't just to get health. Something far larger is at work in these water baths. So that's sort of a little encapsulation of the amazingly magical things we've talked about in this interview.
I love it. Well, Gina, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us and talking to me. I'm just fascinated, now that I'm in this, I love speaking with someone like you who has, that background in anthropology of this is not new. This is new maybe on the radar for people. They're like, wow, when I had heard about it, I hadn't heard about water fasting before Don Javier had brought it up, but there is this very rich history of water fasting and cultural, in all cultures, and animals. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And if people want to find out more about you or the work that you're doing at the Hydration Foundation, can you share a little bit of information?
Yeah, we're at the Hydration Foundation. No, it's hydration, not the hydration. Hydrationfoundation.org. You'll remember it because it rhymes. And we're a nonprofit. And this is the perfect place to say that the Hydration Foundation was founded to forward Jerry Pollack's work. This is how we all started this project. And all the new emerging science and the amazing orbit of other scientists around him who are finding out even more about water. So that's what we try to do, is get it to you in a way that's applicable, that makes sense, that's fun. And our main project right now is the Water Museum that we're doing, which features all of our colleagues' work in a very artistic form as an exhibit. But also, if anyone wants to help us, we're launching it on social media so that it's on everybody's cell phone. So you can have access to all this incredible information on what water is and how we are water, our bodies of water, and how to sort of live into that amazing year.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge. And it's always a pleasure.
I'm so glad you asked, Katie. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you for being here today. Please enjoy a previous episode of Born to Heal. And if you found value in our conversation, please subscribe and share with someone who might benefit. Have questions? Drop them in the YouTube comments or message me on Instagram. Links are in the episode description. And remember, just like me, you were born to heal.